Howdy folks, and welcome to Sketchbook Trap. Week 1 in November means we just finished a challenge and a sketchbook, so let's see how we did. My goal for Inktober was to build some watercolor skills, limiting myself, for the most part, to 4 colors: a red, a blue, a warm, and a cool yellow. That way I can teach myself to mix the colors I want out of a very basic palette, and yeah. So I ran off to Hobby Lobby, bought myself a 5x8 watercolor sketchbook because it was cheap, and so am I. I mean, I am wise. Yeah. Anyway. So here is painting number 1. It's probably my first time really playing with watercolors since about the 3rd or the 4th grade. It wasn't October yet, but I really wanted to get started and kill the first page so I didn't come in day 1 of Inktober and see this white page and be like, oh no, what do I do? I just wanted to be able to come in and be raring to go and just jump in and get the first painting done. So I went somewhere to one of our local schools and found something pretty interesting and threw some color on it and turned out pretty good. And then we dive into Inktober. Day 1 was Dream. And I was wandering around my house saying the word dream over and over and over, combining it with random words, getting goofy with it, and I happened to say the word dreamboat out loud and said, oh, well that sounds cool. So I found some pictures of boats and found one I liked, and laid it out on the page, put some color on it. Now I like how the trees turned out. I like how they feel like they're in the distance. The sky wasn't quite what I wanted, but I knew that later on in the book, that'd be one of the things that I would focus on to get more of a vibrant sky. So every picture I tended to focus on something that didn't quite make it for me and use that as something to focus on later. And then we got day 2, which was spiders. Spiders aren't my favorite. And at my house, they die very quickly. However, in this world, I bet that the people here die very quickly. And I thought this was kind of a fun story to tell. My focus kind of paid off on the sky. It turned out better this time. It was kind of fun getting some good earth tones in here as well, and learning how to mix those from some basic colors. So, day 2, pretty successful. And then day 3 was path. I got to this idea pretty quickly. My parents just moved into a place that has an interesting hillside driveway that seemed to match the word path rather well. I imagined a high country landscape that lies kind of at the tree line of a small mountain. And I liked the fence. It was fun to do at the end, throw some ink on there. I was trying to make sure that my shadows were going in the correct directions, and they kind of were. However, that was supposed to be a branch fallen off the tree, but when I looked at it again a couple days later, I'd forgotten about that part and was like, why is this shadow going that direction and that shadow's going that direction? And I was scolding myself. But don't scold yourself. This is just where you trap your ideas so they can't get away from you. Anyway, I liked that picture and I thought it was fun. Day 4 is Dodge. I took a long time figuring this one out. I eventually hopped into a thesaurus, and one of the associated words that went with it was like a shady business or a back alley location, and that sounded kind of neat. Maybe like a bar, one of those out-of-the-way hangouts that bring in local bands and stuff. So I jumped on the internet and found an interesting engagement photo that on Pinterest, and I loved the lighting and how it kind of catches on the edges of the buildings there, and how the darkness of the buildings kind of frame the sunset. Plus, I got to do some line work at the end. I'm a real sucker for line work. It's kind of my guilty pleasure. And now for day 5, which was the word map. I was following a tutorial for these galaxy washes while watching Star Trek, and thought it would be interesting to do a space map, so you can kind of see where my brain was on this one. And it was interesting, doing some really deeper colors. I got pretty heavy with the water on this one, so it warped the page. I guess this stuff doesn't really hold up to too many washes. But it's a cheaper book, so it's fine. But it was fun to learn this technique and get kind of messy with it. Now, I did change the game up on day 6. I had a different paint set, the Koi watercolor set, and I wanted to play with that, and just for something different. And it was the word golden. I used to hang out in Vegas with a buddy of mine, and the Golden Nugget is one of the classic spots down there. So I found a couple referential photos of it and created a setup that I liked and put together an evening painting of the casino entrance here. I didn't quite like how the colors turned out once they dried, but as a travel sketch set, I think it'll be great. And it's nice to shake things up with a different set of tools every once in a while just to keep your brain fresh. Now, I was taking Saturdays off just so I could have some breathing room. And what I chose to do was to combine the Saturday and Sunday prompt words and treat it like a prompt phrase. So Saturday's word was drip and Sunday's was toad, and that one pretty much answered its own question. So here is my drip toad. Yeah. And it's crazy cute. Let's see, day 9 was bounce. And after going through my process of throwing words around, I couldn't come up with anything. And so I thought, well, what if something didn't bounce? And that gave me the idea of crashing spaceship. So I sketched out an interesting space scene, and it has absolutely no inspiration from Calvin and Hobbes, I promise. And then I threw a crashed spaceship on the scene with some smoke coming off of it. And then we have kind of a gross, grimy, toxic atmosphere thing going up there and going on up in the sky there with some fun planets. And that was day 9. And day 10 was the word fortune. So I came up with fortune cookie right off the bat. And this, of course, meant I have to write my own, had to write my own fortune. It had the word perspective in there. So I built the cookie architecturally, and I've been getting a lot of character and a lot of shape to all of my colors. But I wanted to try for a very flat, clean wash, because I know that had been kind of difficult for me beforehand. And I wanted a nice, clean separation line in between. I thought it was rather successful as far as no patchiness or cauliflower effect. I didn't love the colors themselves, but that wasn't what I was after in this picture, so it was a success for me. Called it a victory and moved on to day 11, which was wander. I figured that wander would probably have something to do with people. I'd watched an interesting design of some people just kind of standing around in place, and since I was in tutorial mode, I went and did something very similar. Watching how the presenter was doing it, and the colors, once again, weren't the focus of this one. Just wanted different colors to match each zone of the body, and then trying to indicate that they were doing something, if they were taking a pet somewhere, riding a bicycle. And it turned out okay, and this way I can utilize this later to indicate scale in pictures. And then day 12 was the word spicy. Now, spicy took my brain straight to peppers, to food, to buying stuff at a farm. I grew up in a couple of farming communities, and they all had these little roadside booths that sell fresh veggies to people, and so I made one of those. And it gave me an opportunity to be more bold with my colors and put some people there from the previous exercise. This was a fun one. I like doing this one. I like doing all the plants. And then day 13 was the word rise. I was interested in doing a monochromatic study of some misty trees in the mountains, with a big one in the foreground rising up as an element of focus, with kind of softer elements in the background. And I was seeing if I could establish this feeling of distance on purpose rather than because I got lucky. And I think this one turned out okay. I took Saturday off and combined the words for Sunday, which made the prompt Castle Dagger. So, here's my castle. Here's my dagger. Today's goal was to mix warm and cool greens and warm and cool browns and kind of play with the lighting and the shadows. Frame the shot with a tree over here that didn't turn out half bad. And then we're on to day 16. Now, 16 was one of those days where you get ready for bed and realize you got to get something on paper before you get to go to sleep. So I chose the Blue Angels, and Once again, went for a nice flat wash. This kind of felt like a cheat, but I was tired and wanted to go to bed, so everybody's got at least one of those. This one actually kind of felt like I was doing a thumbnail design for a sticker or something. So it was kind of interesting. Turned out pretty good, and then I crashed. Day 17, I had some family stuff come up, and so I did another combination, combined the words with the 18th, and prepared the prompt. Let's see, I was presented with the prompt demon saddle. And I thought, well, horses are demons. It was fun getting some lighting effects coming to the trees here, and the light-dark contrast separating the stable from the field. And I'd never drawn a saddle before, but it turned out fairly decent. And day 19 was plump. And once again, at a loss for how to get the picture out of this word, I turned to my friendly neighborhood thesaurus, and it turns out that a plump is the name for a group of geese or ducks. Ducks sounded fun to paint, so I took a picture from one of our local parks, got some references of duck images, and I was kind of focusing on getting some good surface reflections and some shapeliness to the ripples of the water, sticking to this fairly monochromatic color scheme, and it helped it seem like a damp and foggy morning. Makes me want coffee and cartoons. Then day 20 was frost. But being as it was already cold, I didn't want to do something cold. I wanted to do something that felt warmer, something that felt more interesting. So I started mulling over other words that went along with frost, and then I thought of Robert Frost, and remembered his poem Birches, and that gave me some good images in my head of trees, and so I did a stand of birches, playing with some of these brighter colors. I felt I'd been being a little soft on things, and it felt like I'd been holding back. So I thought if I just throw some heavy colors on there, what can I pull off? And this let me play with a much warmer palette as I focused on cleaning up my transitions and getting some fun detail work in there. The 21st was a Saturday. So I combined the words of chains and scratchy for day 22. The prompt brought to mind a doghouse that's been scratched on, chewed on, an old chain out front, but no dog to be seen. The things got a little bit muddy this day. Colors felt like they were slopping a little bit. Also, the paper took a pretty big hit from since the birch trees got me loosened up from being timid with the water. And yet, a complete picture got created, so I put a check mark on the calendar and moved along. To day 23, which was celestial. Found a couple really interesting pictures of the moon. Decided to do kind of my own take on a moon. I had up to this point been trying to avoid some of these cauliflower effects. But on occasion, I liked the way they look, so I wanted to see if I could utilize that to make something that looked interesting. I thought it would make an interesting lighting effect, kind of like the headlights that are out of focus or something. Then day 24 was the word shallow. So I looked up some ocean scene references and tried to make something that looked like we were underwater. Wasn't crazy satisfied with most of this, but I did have fun with some of these sea plants that I got to design and fiddle with. That one looks cool. And then day 25 was the word dangerous. An open mine shaft sounded dangerous and would be interesting to explore. And I liked the idea of a super deep canyon view and getting to play with some bright, warm earth tones. And I would totally live in a place like this. Day 26 was remove. I'd forgotten I came up with this concept. I was writing down the word uproot on my idea list, and then right then a helicopter flew over my house. It was so very random, but that sounded crazy fun, so I painted it. Helicopter flower isn't exactly a phrase I've ever said before out loud, and didn't have any preconceived notions of what it was supposed to look like. But there you go. I mean, being super random is fun. I put the Saturday and Sunday together to get beast and sparkle. Now, beasts are animals, and I tried to think of an animal I'd never drawn before, and that brought me to Mr. Bunny. Now, I don't know if you people who own bunnies tell me if they're beasts or not. You can put that down in the comments. And then up here, I wanted to play with some bright light ideas and toss some lightning bugs in there. It was a nice try, but the rabbit was nowhere as cute as that frog. And here on day 29, I realized that I had run out of pages. So I split it up to make space for the last 3 days, and I have to say it was kind of fun getting to work in a smaller section with a vertical format. Now, Massive let me try a brighter water scene and use a white crayon to preserve some of my highlights in the darker section over there. For Rush, I was trying to see how quick I could work in a light, dark, heavy contrast shot, being quite abstract on the background and detailed on the character in the middle here. And then on day 31 for Fire, I got to play with fire, and it was about time. Then all that was left to do was paint the cover and give it a home on my bookshelf. And that was my Inktober. I hope that all of you who did Inktober this year learned something new and created something that makes you proud. Let me know which prompt was the most successful for you this year. And while you're at it, like and subscribe, and I'll be back with you next week to trap more stuff in our sketchbooks.